Whenever I talk about Forza Horizon 4 with my friends, I can't help but bring up its system of progression, or rather, its poor implementation of one. The other day I was having one such conversation when it was brought up that Forza does in fact have a system of progression, which is your collection of cars. I started the game with about 10 or so vehicles, and at this point I have a little over 500. This is a fairly gradual process. It doesn't take you a few days to get 500 cars. I believe that while I have been progressively earning more cars, it's a dreadful way to progress in any game. While there are minor parts of progression in each game, I consider the game's main system of progression to be most important. Games can use car collection for progression and have it work well. My issue with Horizon 4 is that it doesn't. In games like Need for Speed Carbon, car collection ultimately serves no purpose. You're constantly trying to get your hands on the fastest car available, and having more than one is useful if one has a lesser heat level or if the other one has too many impound strikes, and as well as that, it helps to have more than one car in the case that you do impound your car eventually. Other than that, you don't need another car. This system works because you can feel the difference in your car's performance throughout your single player experience. You don't need car collection to be present here. Games like Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 have an open world setting where cars are obtained by finding them in the open world. Car collection is the game's main system of progression, as upgrading your car doesn't take very long and isn't necessarily vital to beating the game. Car collection is important because you need a certain amount of speed points to unlock the next race in the Most Wanted list, and there are only a few races you can do in one car before needing to find another. While car collection is needed to progress in this game due to the requirement for how many speed points you need, the need for a faster car can be fulfilled way too easily. You can find a Lamborghini Gallardo while cruising around in the car you start the game with. A better way of having car collection, be a way of progressing, is to have only a few cars placed in the open world to be discovered at a time. After you beat a certain boss, new cars are available. These would be slightly faster than the ones that you could previously find. This would keep the excitement of finding new cars without ruining the individual progression of how fast the player can go. Games like Burnout Paradise use car collection in the most obvious sense. The cars that you unlock progressively get better as you play the game. This is the most basic type of progression in a racing game I can think of, but that's not a bad thing. It works well enough to encourage the player to have a desire to keep playing the game in order to get a better car. As your car gets faster, AI vehicles get better too. They don't scale to what car you're driving. Try beating the game and then winning races in a Hunter Cavalry. Games like Forza Horizon 1 have many different events with differing restrictions on car performance and the type of car you're driving. You'll start off with something slow, and you'll use the money you earn to upgrade your car as well as buy new cars for different types of events. Money is abundant enough to the point at which a car's performance isn't a real system of progression. You can end up with a relatively fast car in a relatively short period of time. Car collection is the game's main system of progression because you need different types of cars in order to complete enough events to complete the game. Money is the main restriction here, as it's what prevents you from buying other cars. I already mentioned that money is abundant, but it's worth mentioning that I wouldn't call it overwhelmingly abundant. When playing the game, you want to keep an eye on how many credits you have because you can't afford to waste all your money on an overpriced car. Money is abundant enough to give the player personal freedom to freely drive around the car that they want, but it isn't abundant enough to ruin the game's progression. In all of these games, there's one main type of progression that has an incentive. In some of these, the type of progression is just car collection. In Forza Horizon 4, there's hardly any progression at all, and what little of it there is has no effect on your ability to beat the game. All cars are unlocked from the start, and the main restriction in collecting cars is your ability to earn money. In this game, you'll start off with a few cars that aren't that fast, and you'll slowly amass a collection of cars that will ultimately prove to be useless. You can earn more money by doing race events, by collecting Forza rewards, by obtaining businesses and profiting off them, and by making designs and tunes. You can also get money by being rewarded through wheel spins. The only way to actively make money is by doing races. That's why you'll hop on and suddenly notice you have millions of credits at your disposal. It's not a huge deal that money is easily earned if it serves a purpose within the game. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Because of Horizon Blueprint, you won't need specific cars for events, and in fact, most events change their restrictions on the spot to accommodate to what car you're driving. Because the AI scales to the car you're driving, you won't need to buy a new car nor upgrade your existing one. You can beat the game without ever changing your starter vehicles at all. Not only is money worthless, upgrades are worthless, and getting new cars is worthless. On the bright side, weekly Forzathon events have restrictions similar to the events found in the first Horizon game. The problem with these events is that they usually reward you with money, new cars, or wheel spins, which give you the previous two things. If you beat a Forzathon live event, You might use the money you now have, or the car you now own, for another Forzathon Live event. This is a cycle of uselessness. Suppose that the game in general rewarded the player with a very small amount of money, and that Forzathon Live events were an abundant source of money. At least, these events would have an incentive. Forzathon Live events often reward the player with exclusive cars. The problem here is that due to the fact that there are already so many cars, a new exclusive car isn't likely going to feel much different from your other available options. With the release of each new exclusive car, the chance of it feeling unique decreases. The fact that you won't need a new exclusive car for anything besides cruising in the game's single player is a problem. Forza Horizon 4 does have a fairly robust multiplayer, and because races are restricted by car class, your money in the cars you collect do serve a purpose, or they would serve a purpose if it wasn't useless to race in anything that isn't overpowered. Playground games have balanced multiplayer by banning certain cars, but they have a lot more work to do before multiplayer is completely balanced. I will still hold that online multiplayer in Forza Horizon 4 is more well built and expansive than other current arcade racers, and that you can spend a lot of time entertained by it. This shouldn't excuse the fact that the single player experience is quite honestly awful. In Forza Horizon 1, you both had a decent multiplayer and a great single player experience. I can't see why we can't get both of those now. Forza Horizon 4 is more of a sandbox game than it is a normal video game. There isn't truly a clear objective. Horizon 4 is more about doing whatever you want, whenever you want, and I understand the appeal of this. The problem here isn't that Horizon 4 isn't a traditional game. The problem is that it doesn't succeed as a sandbox either. In Horizon 1, you had enough money to buy, upgrade, cruise, and compete online with cars that you built to your liking. It still had this style of game in mind. The only difference here is that the single player experience wasn't completely ruined because of it. Horizon 1 had fun multiplayer, balanced progression, and player freedom. As you can see, Playground games can learn something from their past games.